The music stopped for 1 second, and the whole ballroom turned to look at the corner where Silas stood alone. A young woman named Cordelia had just crossed the floor, walked straight past 3 lords and 2 countesses, and stood in front of him with her hand out. Gasps spread through the crowd like fire through dry grass. No one had ever asked Silas to dance. No one even looked at him for more than a moment. He was the Duke's brother, but people called him strange, slow, and unfit for company. Servants spoke to him in soft, careful voices as if he might break. Guests moved around him the way they would move around a locked door. But Cordelia did not know the rules of this house, or she simply did not care. She had watched him from across the room for the last 10 minutes. While every other man postured and laughed too loudly, Silas stood quietly, counting the small gold patterns carved into the ceiling above him. He was not sad. He was not lost. He was simply himself, untouched by the noise around him. When the orchestra began the first song of the night, and every eligible woman waited for a lord to claim her hand, Cordelia did something no one expected. She walked to Silas and asked him to dance. The room fell into whispers immediately. A merchant's daughter, asking the Duke's forgotten brother to dance, before any lord had even chosen a partner. Somewhere near the front of the hall, Alaric, the Duke himself, turned sharply at the sound of the crowd's gasps. His eyes found his brother standing frozen, staring at the hand offered to him. Silas had never been asked for anything before. People gave him orders, gave him pity, gave him distance. No one had ever simply asked. His fingers trembled as he looked at Cordelia's face, searching for mockery, searching for a joke about to be revealed. He found none. Her eyes were steady, patient, and completely serious. Slowly, Silas placed his hand in hers. The moment their hands touched, the murmurs in the room grew louder, sharper, filled with judgment. Somewhere behind a marble pillar, an older woman whispered that the girl must be mad or desperate or both. Another guest laughed behind a painted fan, but Cordelia did not turn to face them. She kept her eyes on Silas, waiting for him to take the first step. He hesitated, unsure of the rhythm, unsure of himself. Then, taking a breath, he moved forward and the dance began. Across the room, Alaric took 1 step forward, ready to intervene, ready to protect his brother from whatever cruelty this strange girl might be planning. But something in the way Silas moved, the way his shoulders slowly relaxed, made the Duke stop where he stood. For the first time in years, his brother did not look afraid. He looked, for one brief moment, like he belonged exactly where he was standing. Silas counted his steps under his breath, the way he always did when he needed to feel safe. 1, 2, 3, turn. 1, 2, 3, turn. Cordelia noticed immediately but said nothing. She simply matched her steps to his rhythm instead of forcing him to match hers. It was such a small thing, yet no one had ever done it before. Every dance instructor, every distant relative, every well-meaning servant had always tried to correct him, to pull him into their pace, their pattern, their world. Cordelia did the opposite. She let him lead in his own way. As they moved across the floor, Silas began to speak, quietly at first, telling her about the ceiling patterns he had been studying, the exact number of gold diamonds carved into the plaster, the way the chandelier light bounced differently depending on where a person stood. Most people would have smiled politely and changed the subject. Cordelia leaned in and asked him to explain more. She was not humoring him. She was genuinely curious, and Silas could tell the difference immediately. He had spent his whole life being spoken to in slow, simple sentences, as if his mind could not hold anything complex. But when he spoke to Cordelia about numbers and patterns and the small details most people never noticed, she understood him faster than anyone ever had. Across the ballroom, whispers continued to rise, but neither of them paid attention. For those few minutes, the crowd disappeared, and it was only the music, the movement, and the strange, easy comfort between two people who had never met before that night. When the song ended, Silas released her hand, unsure of what to do next. Cordelia simply smiled, thanked him for the dance, and returned to her seat as if nothing unusual had happened at all. But for Silas, everything had changed. For the first time since he could remember, someone had chosen him, not out of pity, not out of duty, but because she wanted to. Across the room, Alaric watched his brother's face and saw something he had not seen in years, a small, quiet smile that stayed long after the music stopped. The Duke did not know whether to feel relieved or worried. He had spent his entire life protecting Silas from a world that mocked him, and now a stranger had walked into that world and, without asking permission from anyone, treated his brother like he mattered. Alaric made his way through the crowd, intending to speak with this bold young woman himself, to understand exactly who she was and why she had done what she did. But before he could reach her, another guest stepped into his path, eager to discuss business, and by the time he turned back, Cordelia had already disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind nothing but a room full of gossip and a brother who could not stop smiling. By morning, the story had already spread across every drawing room in the city. Servants whispered it while pouring tea. Mothers repeated it while adjusting their daughters' gloves before afternoon visits. The merchant's daughter who danced with the Duke's simple brother became the only topic anyone wanted to discuss. Some called it scandalous. Others called it foolish. Almost no one called it kind. Cordelia's own family grew anxious the moment the rumors reached their door. Her aunt warned her that no respectable lord would consider marrying a woman who had embarrassed herself in front of the entire ton. Her father worried about the family's reputation among his business partners. Cordelia listened to their concerns quietly, but she did not regret her decision. She had seen a man being ignored, treated as invisible in a room full of people, and she had simply refused to look away. Meanwhile, at Ashworth House, Alaric found himself unable to focus on his usual duties. He kept replaying the image of his brother's smile, a smile that had been missing for years. He decided to seek out Cordelia himself, not to scold her, but to understand her. When he finally arranged a private meeting through a mutual acquaintance, he expected to find a young woman seeking attention or advantage. Instead, he found someone entirely unbothered by status or gossip. She explained plainly that she had noticed a person being excluded, and she had simply done what felt right. There was no hidden motive, no calculated plan. Alaric studied her closely, searching for insincerity but found none. Her honesty unsettled him in a way he had not expected. He had spent years surrounded by people who spoke carefully, calculating every word for personal gain, and here was a woman who spoke without any performance at all. Before leaving, Alaric found himself inviting her to visit the estate again, telling himself it was only to see how Silas responded to her presence a second time. But deep inside, he already knew there was more to his curiosity than concern for his brother. Over the following days, whispers about the scandal grew louder, but so did quiet admiration from a few unexpected corners. Some young women in society began to speak kindly of Cordelia's boldness, even if they would never admit it publicly. Silas, meanwhile, waited eagerly for her promised visit, practicing what he might say, rehearsing the patterns he wanted to show her. When she finally arrived at Ashworth House, she greeted him warmly, as though their strange first meeting had been the most natural thing in the world. Alaric watched the two of them from a distance, torn between gratitude for his brother's happiness and a growing, unfamiliar feeling stirring quietly within his own chest, one he was not yet ready to name. Over the following weeks, Cordelia visited Ashworth House often, and each visit revealed something new about Silas that no one in society had ever bothered to notice. She learned about his sketchbooks filled with careful drawings of staircases, windows, and garden paths, each one measured with remarkable precision. She learned that loud rooms overwhelmed him, that sudden noises made his hands tighten, and that he preferred quiet mornings in the library over crowded afternoon gatherings. She never tried to change him or fix him. She only tried to understand him, and in doing so, she gave him a kind of confidence he had never felt before. Silas began speaking more freely, laughing more easily, even joining small family gatherings he once avoided entirely. Alaric noticed the change immediately, and gratitude toward Cordelia grew alongside something deeper and harder to ignore. He found himself waiting for her visits, watching for her carriage from his study window, inventing small reasons to join the conversations between her and Silas. Yet just as their bond grew stronger, complications began to surface. A wealthy merchant named Edmund began courting Cordelia, drawn by her father's growing fortune rather than any genuine affection for her. Her family encouraged the match, eager to secure financial stability and put an end to the lingering gossip from the ball. At the same time, members of the Ton pressured Alaric to distance himself from the scandal entirely, warning him that continued association with Cordelia would damage his family's standing. Alaric found himself caught between duty and desire, unsure how to protect both his brother's happiness and his own growing feelings without causing harm to either. One quiet evening, as Cordelia sat with Silas in the garden, sketching alongside him in comfortable silence, Alaric watched from the terrace, struck by how easily she fit into their world. He realized then that his feelings had grown far beyond gratitude or curiosity. He cared for her deeply, yet he feared that pursuing her himself might feel like a betrayal to Silas, who had never before had anyone choose him first. The weight of that fear kept Alaric silent, even as the pressure from society grew louder and Edmund's courtship of Cordelia became more persistent. Cordelia herself remained unaware of the quiet conflict building around her, focused instead on Silas's growing confidence and the small joys of their shared afternoons. But time was running short. Her family expected an answer from Edmund soon, and the Ton's patience for scandal was wearing thin. Somewhere beneath the garden's quiet calm, three lives were quietly heading toward a decision that would change all of them forever. The next grand ball at Ashworth House arrived with more attention than any event that season. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next in the story that had captivated the entire city. Silas, encouraged by months of Cordelia's steady support, chose to attend the crowded gathering on his own, a decision that once would have felt impossible to him. He walked into the ballroom with his shoulders straight, his breathing calm, ready to face the noise and the crowd without fear. Meanwhile, Alaric prepared himself for a different kind of courage. He had decided, after weeks of quiet struggle, to step back and allow Cordelia to choose her own path, even if that path led toward Edmund. He told himself it was the right thing to do, the selfless thing, though it left a heavy ache in his chest. But before he could act on that decision, Silas approached him quietly near the edge of the ballroom. With a calm certainty that surprised his brother, Silas spoke plainly, telling Alaric that he had seen the way his brother looked at Cordelia and the way she looked back at him. He explained, without any trace of jealousy, that his own bond with Cordelia was friendship, nothing more, and that some feelings did not need to be spoken aloud to be understood. Alaric stared at his brother, stunned by his clarity and his selflessness. For years, Alaric had protected Silas, guided him, shielded him from a world that misunderstood him. In that moment, it was Silas who guided his brother instead. Freed from his hesitation, Alaric crossed the ballroom floor toward Cordelia, who stood near the edge of the dance floor, unaware of the quiet decision that had just been made on her behalf. As the orchestra began to play, Alaric extended his hand and asked her for the next dance. The room fell silent once again, just as it had months before, but this time the whispers carried curiosity rather than judgment. Cordelia accepted without hesitation, her eyes bright with surprise and quiet joy. As they moved together across the floor, the crowd watched with growing delight rather than scorn, sensing that something rare and genuine was unfolding before them. Near the edge of the room, Silas watched the dance with a calm, steady smile, no longer standing alone in the shadows as he once had. Around him, a small group of new friends, people Cordelia had introduced him to over the past months, greeted him warmly, drawing him into easy conversation. For the first time in his life, Silas felt fully present in a crowded room, not invisible, not pitied, but truly seen. As the music swelled and the dance continued, the story that had begun with one bold invitation ended with an entire family transformed, bound together not by status or expectation, but by simple, quiet kindness.